and she went another 15 miles on fumes.
She told me herself, so we're gonna go on a date. She and me, her and I, me and her.
Well, Dad, we were kind of hoping to save that till after dinner.
No, I want to hear about it now.
Maxine said if they needed help, they would give me a call.
No, you're leaving. You want to know why? Because I gotcha.
I'm amazed at how that boy could stand in my kitchen in front of my face and lie to me like that.
I'm going to stand up to Mrs. Huxtable.
Well, I don't think you want to do that.
Your wife won't let you do anything.
Hi, my name is Miriam, and this is the Black TV Show podcast, currently talking about The Cosby Show Season 3. Welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 52, The Cosby Show Season 3, Episode 4, Man Talk. This episode aired October 16th, 1986. So we're at Theo's high school. And first off, before we even really get into this episode, I noticed that Alan Payne is in this episode as an extra. He has no lines. He's clearly not credited in this episode. He is the man. So when we first see the scene where we're at the high school, there's a man and a woman he has his arm around this girl. They start walking all the way to the locker to the left side of the screen. And then later on, when Theo goes to his locker, they're right next to Theo when he's looking back and forth at Randy. And I was just like, damn, so he must have worked as an extra for a while, and he probably has auditioned for the show. And first off, if you don't know who Alan Payne is, which is so sad if you don't know who he is, but the recent thing that he's mostly known for is from the show The House of Pain. He plays, what's his name? CJ. That's his name. He plays CJ. He's a firefighter, and I think eventually he's a fire chief. But he also starred in The Cosby Show in the last 2 seasons as Lance, who is Charmaine's boyfriend and also friend of Pam. Which, if you've never seen The Cosby Show, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. We'll definitely dig into that when we get to those seasons. But I was just shocked that I saw him in this episode. I was like, he's playing an extra, so he must have worked. It's very normal for actors to do extra work. And when I mean extras are people that are in the background. In order to make these scenes realistic, they need to have these people to be walking back and forth, driving, whatever, and they're called extras. And of course, they do not get paid as much as an actor, but they do get paid. And so sometimes actors do a lot of extra work in order to make money in between trying to get an actual acting role. And so maybe that's the reason why he was in this episode, but it's crazy. So he must have, I feel like he probably auditioned so many times to be Theo's friend, and they just have never had him on the show until they brought in, Erica Alexander's character as Pam, and then brought him on to the show then. But I was just like, whoa, he's actually in the show. He's an extra. So I just wanted to point that out. So we see Theo and Tanya, and they're talking about this history test that they took, talking about each question, which answers that they put. And we find out Theo basically got 19 out of 20 because he didn't know the answer. He didn't have the right answer to the last question. And at first he thought that he did have the right answer, but then they asked the smartest kid in school, and he said, no, you got that answer wrong, basically. And so then while they're talking, this girl walks by Theo, and Theo's caught off guard, basically. And Tanya says, I gotta go to band practice, I'll talk to you later. And so she leaves, and Theo keeps looking at that girl and decides to go to his locker. And while he's there, Cockroach and Gerald, I think that's how they said his name, come. That's Theo's friend. And Gerald is going to help them study for the college boards because he's super smart, apparently. And so they're like, okay, we'll meet at Theo's house later on. So they leave. And the girl is still looking at him when he looks at him. And then the girl looks at Theo when Theo looks at her. And so Theo opens his locker and he sees a note, and the note is from her. And so she smiles and walks away. First of all, this person that's playing this character is basically an extra also, but she is credited in this episode, just to let you know, because she didn't have any lines. But I guess she did some acting because, she kept staring a lot, and the camera basically looked at her. And so we go to the living room, and Vanessa's sitting upside down on the couch reading her geography book. And Rudy comes and says, she wants to play. And Vanessa's like, I can't. I have 25 pages to read from this geography book by Monday. And, Vanessa says, I'm in the 8th grade. I now need to buckle down. I can't be playing all the time. Because Rudy basically said it's Saturday. Like, you don't need to study on Saturday. But she's like, I need to study. I know that feeling of, you got to study on the weekend. Also, you're like, you want to enjoy your weekend, but you can't. And so Rudy says, I'm in the 2nd grade. And Vanessa's like, so? And Rudy's like, we don't need to take naps anymore. What? That doesn't beat the argument about the 8th grade part. It doesn't make sense. And so Vanessa says, she can't have tea today. And Rudy says, the next time you ask me to do something, I'm not going to do it. And Vanessa's like, really? Oh, so can you stay with me and keep me company? And Rudy's like, no. And she leaves. And Cliff comes and sees Vanessa upside down, and he's like, what are you doing? So he asks, like, is this a form of punishment? And Vanessa's like, no. I'm studying. And Cliff was like, what, bats? Smart answer. Yes. She wants to see how they live being upside down, And so Vanessa says, no, I'm studying. This is a better way of studying. Whatever I read goes straight to my head. No, that's not true. That I honestly think that it would like hurt my head if I was upside down for a long time. Because the circulation of blood going towards my brain, me thinking about that is not a good idea. So let's move on to that. But I don't think that's a good method of getting things into your head. So Cliff goes into the kitchen, and also he's just like, what is my daughter thinking? And when he's in the kitchen, Theo comes down and wants to discuss something with Cliff. And Theo says, another girl is after me, even though she's dating Tanya, right? And her name is Randy Taylor. And, every guy at school has asked her out, and they have failed. And she wants me. And she gave Theo a note, and also she gave him a look. And so the note that it says, hi, Theo, Randy. And Theo's like so like gaga on this, like he's just like, oh my gosh, she left me a note, and Cliff is just like, okay, it just says hi Theo Randy, like it has no message, basically there's no nothing in there. And Theo asks Cliff, look at how she dotted her I, because at first of all I was like, what I he's talking about, is he talking about the I that's on high? But then apparently when I looked at the credits, her name is Randi, not Randy, like the usual Randy. So I guess that's what he was talking about. And apparently to Theo's eyes, it is shaped in a heart. But Cliff was like, it looks like a circle. And so Theo asks, like, should I go for it? Like, should I, ask her out? He likes Tanya, but he doesn't want to reject Randy. And, he's basically asking Cliff for permission to ask Randy out while dating Tanya. And Cliff is like, I'm not doing that. I'm not here to be part of this. The only reason why you came to me is so you can get permission. And if it's all right to go with Randy. And he's like, I did not say that. I'm not, I don't deal with the matters of the heart. I've had 2 daughters, and it basically he's just had bad experience with dealing with the matters of the heart, and he does not want to do it anymore. All Cliff wants is to know when Theo is going to get married. Just literally tell me when you're going to get married. Tell me what the date is, and he will show up and bring a present, a card that says, congratulations, Theo and Randy, or congratulations, Theo and Tanya, or congratulations, Theo and Ice Capades. What? That doesn't make sense. And Theo is on his own with this topic, basically. And Cliff says, the only thing is I'm here to listen, not give advice, basically. And so he's like, okay, fine. And so Theo goes to his room and he's reading the note, and Cockroach and Gerald come to study for their college board exams. And Theo asks for them to keep a secret about this Randy's note. And so Theo, so they see the note, and they're like, "Whoa, you got a note from Randy?" And Theo asks him, "Do you see the heart?" And they're like, "No, it looks like a circle." And Cockroach tells Theo, like, "You have lived a full life. How do you do it?" And Theo says, I didn't do anything. And Gerald says, I'm not surprised. Like, a lot of girls like Theo. And it's true. Like, I've heard the girls talk about him. And, they say that, you're good looking, but he doesn't even know it. And Theo's like, no, I don't believe that. That's not true. And Cockroach says, no, it's what when I acted that I didn't look so good, I got a lot of girls to basically ask me out. And Gerald says, he doesn't even know how he acts around girls. So Gerald says, for me, I'm shy. I can't, I don't know how to act around girls. And then Gerald asks, well, so are you going to ask Randy out? And Theo's like, I don't know if I'm going to ask her out. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that. And Theo's like, we're supposed to be studying right now. And so Gerald's like, okay, let's do the verbal section. And so he asks the question, number 1, magnet is to metal as A, hammer is to nail, or B, as radar is to airplane, Theo is to Randy Taylor. And Cockroach just starts laughing. He's like, C. Of course, that's the wrong answer. And we end Act 1 there, and we go into Act 2. And Claire is making a care package for Denise that she's going to send to Hillman. First of all, this is another way of hiding. What are we hiding? Felicia's baby bump. You're just going to start noticing this throughout Season 3. Of course, once we get to the end of Season 3, she'll be already delivering the baby, but right now, the methods of them hiding this baby it's funny to me, And, Claire is sending macadamia nuts to Denise, and Cliff was like, no, she hates macadamia nuts. Like, why would you send that? And Claire was like, you lie. She loves them. And Cliff was like, yeah, I like them too. So he basically wants it for himself, okay? And so Claire tells Cliff that, Rudy wants to have a tea party, but no one's available, and I gotta go to the office. So would you want tea with Rudy? He's like, of course I would love to have tea. I'm just surprised that, she didn't invite me. And so he goes into the living room to talk to Rudy and says, I heard that you're having a tea party, but you didn't invite me. And Rudy's like, I thought you were busy because everyone else was busy. And Cliff was like, do I look busy? Like, no, I'm not busy. And so Cliff says, we're going to dress up fancy for tea time, which will be at 4 p.m. So we cut to Theo's room, and they're studying for the board exams, and then they decide to take a break. So Cockroach is like, so who are you gonna pick? And Gerald says, I think you should stay with Tanya. And then Cockroach says, no, I think you should go with Randy. And, if he breaks up with Tanya, Cockroach will date Tanya. And Theo was like, no, you're not going to date Tanya. That's so mean. Like, no, like, you're not going to be like the rebound guy. Okay, that's not going to happen. And Cockroach ends up mentioning that, he hasn't been on a date in 4 months. And they're like in shock. They're like, but you always keep talking about that you asking all these girls out. And he's like, yeah, I've been lying for the last couple months. I've asked a girl out for 7 times and she has said no. And they basically says, like, if you ask a girl out for 7 times, it really means that they don't like you, okay? You leave them alone, basically. And Gerald says, I wonder if girls sit around and talk about us like we do about them. And they was like, yeah, they do all the time. I have sisters. I've heard them. They say everything worse than we do. And Theo says, they talk about our bodies and they show no mercy. Gerald asks, can they see themselves ever getting married? And Cockroach says, I'm not sure to be married to someone for 20 years. Like, I don't know if I could be with someone for that long. And Gerald says, my folks have been married for 25 years and they still kiss. And Theo was like, well, mine are all over each other. And Cockroach says, I won't get married until the perfect woman. And she has to love sports and always pick up after herself. And then we cut to the kitchen, and Claire is done with her box. She has closed it up, and Cliff like double checks, like, have you closed up the box? And she's like, yeah, I did. And so Cliff was like, okay, good. And he basically sold the macadamia nuts, and he opens it and starts eating it. And so Theo comes down from studying, and they've been studying a lot of subjects, and Cliff was like, oh, do a lot of the subjects have to do with college? Theo was like, yeah, some of them. And the phone rings, and Theo picks it up. It's Tanya. She wants to come over and talk. And so he hangs up the phone, and Claire noticed that there's something wrong. Like, what's going on with you and Tanya? And Theo was like, I don't know. It's not working out like it should be. You know, we're not like you guys. And Claire was like, well, we're married for 23 years, so it's different. And Theo was like, yeah, but you started dating before I was younger than I was. And like, they've known that they've wanted to be together. They've known for such a long time that they wanted to be each other. Like, they're meant to be together. And Claire says, I don't really know about that. I had doubts at first. I'll be honest on that. And Cliff was like, no, I knew Claire was going to be the one ever since I laid eyes on her. And Cliff says, you know, I've never wanted to see anyone else. And Theo says, that's what I want with Tanya, but that didn't work out that way. And Claire was like, wait a minute. What about Eunice Chantelli? And what woman would be named that? That is... Okay, sorry, I should not be name shaming. But it's just, I feel bad for that woman that's named that. So she wears a lot of tight clothes, tight jackets, high heels, and she was 18 years old and still in the 9th grade. And Cliff says she was just a friend and someone to talk to. And like, he's eating his macadamia nuts, and like, just like, he looks like he's sobbing and crying. And Claire was like, she was known for many things, but conversation was not one of them. And Claire says, you know, she's convinced that Cliff has a photo of her hidden in this house somewhere. And Claire tells Theo, you know, Claire says, if you want to see someone, you should. You know, he says yes, but he still likes Tanya. And Claire says, it's okay, you're still young. Like, you have lots of time to decide who you would want to be with. But Claire added that whatever you decide to do, be honest with yourself and Tanya. And Theo says, thank you for helping me out. And he leaves. And later on, and Theo's waiting for Tanya, and she comes to sit down on the couch and says, you know, I know about Randy. You know, a friend told her about it. And Tanya says, you know, she noticed that he's interested in her. The way he looks at Randy, you could tell he likes her. And so Tanya says, like, maybe we should stop seeing each other for a while. And, you know, it's not just you, it's also me. You know, I've been talking to Charlie Myers, who is, I think, the band leader of her band. And and she's thinking of, like, going on a date with him. And Theo was like, what? You're gonna go on a date with Charlie Myers? What? And so Theo tells Tanya, like he's just in shock. The thing is, he was gonna dump her. So, like, why is he so upset about this situation? Okay. And Tanya was like, oh, I guess I should give you back the ring. And Theo was like, no, keep the ring. It's supposed to be a friendship ring, and we're still friends, right? And Tanya says, yeah, Theo, you gave me a lot of confidence. You made me feel good about myself. Basically, he gave her self-love in a way. And if it wasn't for him, she wouldn't have the confidence to talk to Charlie. And he was like, okay, you're welcome, I guess, because it's opposite of what he wanted. Because he had no issue to dump Tanya for Randy, but he has an issue that Tanya dumped him to be with Charlie. Okay, why? What is this? This is a double standard right there. Okay, but I understand how it feels if I was in Theo's position. I know, I would still feel. I would be angry. Angry would be my answer. And so then Tanya says, I gotta go. And so Theo and Tanya give one last kiss to each other, and Tanya leaves for the last time. We will not see her again on the show. And so Cliff comes down in his outfit ready for tea time, the tea party. And Theo says he needs to talk to Cliff. And so he tells Cliff what happened. Tanya dumped me for another guy. And Theo was like, Cliff says, like, weren't you going to do the same to her? And Theo was just, like, not happy. Like, why did she pick Charlie Myers? and Theo and Cliff, go into the kitchen to have tea with Rudy. And like Theo's just mad. He's just like, she dumped me. Like, what the heck? And so Cliff says, he brought Theo Huxtable, the Earl of Melancholy. Melancholy. I said it wrong. The last time I saw that word was on the artist The Weeknd. He has an album called Call Me Melancholy or something like that. So I wanted to know what the actual definition is, and it's a feeling of sadness typically with no obvious cause. And so Theo keeps thinking about Tanya, and Cliff is so into his tea time. He's having that British accent with Rudy, and Cliff says, Earl is depressed, and Rudy was like, "Is that woman's problem?" And Theo just looks at Rudy like, "Do you want to die today?" Like that, like death stare. And the phone rings, and Cliff goes and picks it up. It is Maxine, and Theo is like, "Don't hang up the phone. I'm gonna take it in the living room. I want to talk to her." It's Maxine Cookwood. She is a majorette. So he's like, I need to talk to her. And so he was about to walk into the living room, and Cliff hangs up the phone. And with back then, if you hang up the phone, you hang the call, basically. It doesn't come back. And luckily, she calls back, and Theo goes and picks up the phone. And so Cliff tells Rudy, Earl has now become Earl of Rebound, because he is rebounding with Maxine. And so Cliff gives that English toast with Rudy. And we end the episode right there. And so one thing I gotta mention that I noticed when watching this episode is that the show ends with this episode is dedicated to our friend A. Marcus Hemphill. I said that last name so wrong. I'm sorry. He is, so I had to look him up, and he is a New York playwright and television writer who died at the age of 56 and lived in the Bronx. He worked with Bill Cosby, so that's this episode was dedicated to him. So we had a lot of guest stars here. We had Carl Anthony Payne, like usual, Cockroach. We know him. Tanya Wright, which we've met. We saw her in the episode of The Card Game in season 2. This is her last episode, of course, because they have broken up. Of course, she has gone on to doing more acting afterwards. And then we had Eddie Castrad. I can't say the last name wrong. I'm sorry. I'm like the wrong person for names. I need to have someone on this show that like literally could say names properly. So the guest spot. So he's done some guest spots on Miami Vice, the show Fame. He's in another episode of The Cosby Show in season 4, so we will see him again. But he did stop acting in 1989. Not sure what he's done. It didn't say that he passed away, so I'm thinking he's still alive, but I could be wrong. I'm not sure. And then there's like Alicia Pringle as Randy. This is her only episode yet again. She's probably a girl from the hood, from New York City, that they decided to bring her on to the show, and then she never went into acting after that. And I did notice that she had no lines for this episode, so technically she would have been an extra, but they gave her a credit because the whole episode was literally about her character. And then we had John Vapola, and also his only credit, another guy from the hood of New York City, although he's white. But yeah, so we're gonna keep seeing that, like where these people only have 1 credits and they've never acted again after that. And I also want to mention that both Sabrina LaBeouf and Lisa Bonet did not appear in this episode. Now that Denise is in college, it's going to be like this for, I believe, season 3, where both of them won't appear in the episode, which is kind of weird because then that's like, it's like, 40% of the kids missing from the show. But of course, Sabrina will become more into the show once we hit season 4, once she's graduated college. So yeah. And the lesson for this episode is be honest to yourself. What Claire said to Theo, really just be honest, self-love, all that stuff. be true to yourself. That is truly the lesson for this episode. And the question I have for you guys is, have you been in a situation where you dated someone and then another person is also interested in you and you're not sure what to do? Let me know. I want to hear your stories. Let me know at Twitter and Instagram at Black TV Shows Pod using the hashtag #ManTalk. I would love to hear those stories. It'll be interesting to hear them. And the next episode is episode 53 of The Cosby Show season 3, episode 5, Mother Maya. And I will see you all on the next one.